Okay, we are in the book of 2 Samuel. If you find 1 Samuel, just flip over and you'll find 2 Samuel. And we are in chapter 4 of 2 Samuel. Sometimes wicked people in a righteous regime believe they're doing good when they continue on in their little evil paths. They can't really think beyond their own little idiosyncrasies of wickedness, even in what they believe is a good thing. Because it's their heart is the problem. So, 2 Samuel chapter 4. And we have our mascot, a mini bear, or St. Bernard. I gave him a little treat, and you can hear the aftermath of, indulging, shall we say. Okay, here we go. That's Canute. There's Canute. He's wandering around. Daddy Bear made some coffee, and he smells that. And he wanted a little treat, so I gave him a little treat. I'm having some bear coffee in the bear's gym, kind of made camping style, and he's having a little treat that Daddy made up for him. Okay, here we go. Chapter 4 of 2 Samuel. When Saul's son Ishbosheth heard that Abner had died in Hebron, his courage failed, and all Israel was dismayed. Saul's son Ishbosheth had a couple of men that were kind of his right-hand people, his guardians, and they weren't very good men. They were leaders of raiding parties, and their names are given. Baanah, and the other was Rechab, sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite of the Benjamites. Beeroth is also considered part of Benjamin, and the Beerothites fled to Gittaim and still live there as aliens to this very day. So from this writing, they're kind of giving you a little historical background. Now here's a little mini story within a story. Saul's son Jonathan, whom David was best friends with, had a son whose feet were crippled. He was 5 years old when the report about Saul and Jonathan, who were killed in battle, came from the front lines. His nurse picked him up and fled as she was hurrying to flee, and he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. And in those days, kind of like the kings of England, when a firstborn son was born and they had others that were kind of in line, they kind of worried for their lives because the possibility of them being killed was very possible, very highly possible. Matter of fact, imminent. So get out of Dodge if you understand that expression. So she fled, and Jonathan's son, whose name was Mephibosheth, became lame, kind of gimp. Like he had a couple broken legs or an arm or something, and was always a little bit because of this injury. And they were in such a hurry to flee, they didn't stop for medical attention. Rechab and Baanah, the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, set out and arrived at Ishbosheth's house during the heat of the day while the king was taking his midday nap. So they had little afternoon siestas back then in warm weather. They entered the interior of the house as if to get wheat, and they killed him with a sword. They stabbed him in the stomach, it says. Then Rechab and his brother Baanah escaped. They had entered the house while Ishbosheth was having his little afternoon nap, his little bear's nap. He was lying on his bed in his bedroom, and they stabbed and killed him. Then they beheaded him. That's brutal, but there's kind of a finality in that. There's a hanging or a military execution by firing the squad or lethal injection, and they kind of look dead, or maybe they're not quite dead. But you clip their head off, it's a done deal. They're done. So they traveled all night through the Arabah, and they brought Ishbosheth's head to David at Hebron, and said to the king, "Here is the head of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, your enemy, who intended to take your life. Today the Lord has granted vengeance to my lord the king against Saul and his offspring." Now they traveled all night they were probably hoping to get a monetary gift or reward. That's not quite how it turned out for him. I'll give you a little hint right off the bat. Just because Saul was David's enemy didn't mean that David's enemy was all of Saul's children. That's just not the way it was. Maybe somewhere, but David respected the chain of command, the office of the president, the office of the governor, the office of the mayor. David respected the office. But David answered Rechab and his brother Baanah, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, "As surely as the Lord lives, the one who has redeemed my life from every distress, when the person told me, 'Look, Saul is dead,' he thought he was a bearer of good news, but I seized him and put him to death in Ziklag. That was my reward to him for his news. How much more when wicked men kill a righteous man in his own bed, in his own house? Now should I not require his blood from your hands and wipe you off from the earth?" So David gave orders to the young men, and they killed Rechab and Baanah, and they cut off their hands and feet and hung their bodies by the pool of Hebron. But they took Ishbosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron. Now, it was a brutal culture, and they didn't have prisons for, people to watch TV all day and get, served 3 meals and sue the government for their coffee being cold or too hot. And they didn't have all that ridiculous stuff. You served hard labor or you were executed. That was the way it was. They didn't mess around. They didn't play games with prisoners like they do now. So they're bearers of what they thought would be good news to David. David respected Saul and his family. And to hear that one of Saul's sons were executed brutally in his own house, being the leader, didn't turn out like they expected. Because in that day, the word of the king was the law. Boom, done. All right, 2 Samuel chapter 4. We are seeing the progression now. The Civil War was almost over before it started, but kind of lingers on. Now there's been a death, and an execution, and a killing, and a murder, and slowly we're going to see David put into the place where God had intended him to be and was foretold to Saul already, that he's going to be the man and he's going to be there. And so we're going to see that progression happening, and David is closer and closer and closer to sitting upon the throne of the entire nation of Israel. All right, until next time, God bless you from the Bears Gym. See you soon. Bye-bye.